few events that are so immense, once a year is more than enough. Few races ask you to test yourself against the clock in reverse. See, this is not about how fast you are.
Oh! It has gone again!
It's not about where you qualify. And it's not for the fair weather driver.
And it is now pouring out there.
Some only get one chance. Others have been trying for a lifetime. And very few get to experience this. It can only be Le Mans. This year marks the 75th running of the world's greatest endurance sports car event. Tom Kristensen is the greatest ever driver at Le Mans. 7 victories for Kristensen. Adding to the spectacle in 07, a fresh face with an old brain. Peugeot is back. The objective is simple: to prove Audi isn't the only one with world-class diesel technology capable of winning. And spearheading the attack, 2 French superstars, Jacques Villeneuve and Sebastien Bourdais, will pilot the diesel-powered 908. It's a lineup worthy of Le Mans. The pride of France is on the line, as one of its automotive icons is attempting to win back the race that Audi has owned for the best part of a decade. Audi Sport North America has 2 R10s and Team Yost 1. This combination will be no easy pushover for Peugeot. US teams are again well represented with at least one team in each class. It's time for Le Mans, so let's see who can go the distance.
When marquee events celebrate significant anniversaries, it's a special time, and that time is right now. Speed is proud to deliver live coverage of the 75th anniversary of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. Hello, I'm Leigh Diffey, and welcome to Circuit de la Sarthe here in Le Mans, France, where we have 17.5 hours of live coverage of this tremendous event, the world's greatest endurance sports car event. The headline coming into this year's race is that there is another manufacturer trying to stop Audi's dominance, Audi's ownership of this race. It is, of course, French iconic manufacturer Peugeot, and the Lion has gripped this nation's attention, that's for sure. But before this weekend, there was a bigger story involving the most successful driver in Le Mans history, and Andrew Marriott tells us why Tom Kristensen was in jeopardy of missing this year's race.
Yes, indeed. Welcome back, Mr. Le Mans. It says up there, and it was a very close call. It was only on Monday that he was cleared to drive. And let's take a look at the reason why. Hockenheim. First round. It's a major part of Audi's racing, and look at that, a huge accident like an aeroplane crash on the second corner. Tom had been tipped sideways. He was T-boned by Alexandre Primat, and he was badly shaken. Nothing broken, but he was having dizzy spells. The doctors were worried about him. At the test, there was no Tom Kristensen, and a reserve driver, Matthias Ekstrom, was lined up, but Tom has bounced back. The Brands Hatch, he drove a DTM car just last Sunday, and then he was cleared to drive. And welcome back to here at Le Mans, there with Stefan Ortelli. Kristensen is back. Calvin Fish.
And success at Le Mans is all about the ideal preparation, but for Tom Kristensen, the last 6 or 7 weeks have been anything but ideal. And Tom, talk us through that period of time, and also how are you feeling physically as race time approaches?
I feel very good now, and I look really forward for this race. It's a great challenge. 7-8 weeks ago, I had a big one at Hockenheim, and Audi have humanly, Dr. Ulrich dealt very well with it. Immediately he said, keep you in quiet, switch off your phones, enjoy your family. So obviously it was that was difficult weeks. When I felt good enough, I said, can I have a go in a car again? And actually this healed my process, because when I drove, I knew instantly that, hey, this is where I belong.
As race time approaches, Tom, is your biggest opponent Peugeot or the weather today?
No, it's everything at Le Mans. Obviously, if you don't beat Le Mans, you won't go anywhere. We know that the Audi is a very reliable car. We know we can give it 100% all the time.
Tom, good luck. Hopefully we'll see your 8th title here today.
Thanks, Calvin. Enjoy. Thank you.
And a seemingly relaxed and certainly relieved Tom Kristensen playing to the camera. Hi, everybody. I'm Greg Kramer with Dorsey Schroeder, high atop the legendary tribunes, the grandstands here at Circuit de la Sarthe. And Dorsey, it's got to be very important for Audi to have the experience of Tom Kristensen as they face the onslaught of the double-headed lion, the 2 diesel Peugeots that have come to steal away their thunder. And Audi is prepared.
Well, it's been since 2002 that Audi had run a 3-car factory-back team, and they will do so here today. That 3rd car, it's run by the young guns. Alex Premat will be joined up by Lucas Luhr and Michael Rockenfeller. Now, the other 2 cars, they're going to be driven by the seasoned veterans. But, Greg, make no mistake about this. The tens, if not hundreds of thousands of loyal French fans gathered here today, they want to watch one thing. They want to watch the lion feed.
And that meal started in the test day as Sebastien Bourdais posted a very quick time and ended up atop the charts in testing. Now, the 2nd course was served as the team rolled in for qualifying. And you see there's Jacques Villeneuve, as we said, driving the other car. Now, in qualifying, Audi and Allan McNish looked to have the pole locked up, but very late in the going, Stefan Sarrazin threw down a flyer with just minutes to go, almost midnight local time, and stole the pole away. So as we take a look at the top 5 qualifiers, they are all diesels. It is Peugeot, Audi, and Audi. And Bourdais has really emerged as the star of the team. And earlier, Brian Till caught up with, assuming his car wins, the man who would be king.
It's been since 1993 that Peugeot has won here at Le Mans, and the man who wants to bring them that next victory is this man, Sebastien Bourdais. Born here, raised here, raced here, but to win here and to do so for Peugeot, how special would that be to you?
Well, it would be obviously probably, sentimentally, probably the biggest win I can achieve in my whole career. I was born in Tertre Rouge, which is one of the corners, so you can't get, anywhere closer than that. And, to come back after the 2 years off like this in a works program with Peugeot, French program, it's really special, and we can only hope we can bring it home.
I was going to say, the 908 is obviously very quick. It sits on the pole, but this promises to be a grueling event with the weather the way it could be. You guys have the endurance to make it for 24 hours.
Well, I think the conditions, might help us to kind of show off a little bit sometimes, but it's also risky. You can do yourself good and you can hurt yourself pretty bad. So, I don't think it's in anybody's favor. But to be very honest with you, like you said, the biggest problem and the concern is reliability. The program is only 6 months old, and to come here and to have the wish to win here at Le Mans is probably a little bit ambitious, but we'll give it our best shot and see what happens at the end.
Well, best of luck. Looks like the Audi R10 definitely has a worthy competitor. Be interesting to see if they can make it all the way. 2007, Battle of the Diesels. Leigh?
Brian, it sure is. It's also another massive weekend for another one of the Peugeot drivers, Jacques Villeneuve, 1997 Formula One World Champion. A year earlier, he was partnered with Damon Hill, and this weekend, JV is trying to emulate Damon's father, Graham Hill, to get the Triple Crown. That is an F1 World Drivers title, the Indy 500 title, and winning the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. Graham Hill did it 10 years after his first Formula One World Championship title. And incidentally, this is JV's 10th year since becoming F1 World Champion. It's a big weekend, and it's his rookie weekend at Le Mans. Damon Hill didn't get to achieve what his father did, but our Justin Bell certainly did. Yes, the famous Bell family, of course. His legendary father, Derek, is a Le Mans superstar. 5 times a winner here at La Sarthe, and his son, Justin, got to do it with the mighty Orica squad in 1998. And Justin is standing by with a good friend of his who would like to get his second win here.
former winner of this race. And Alan, obviously the challenge in the last couple of years has been diesel technology, but now it's the kind of game's got a bit hotter, right?
Game's definitely got hotter in terms of, you know, Peugeot coming in, also Pescarolo pushing a little bit further, regulation changes. But to be honest, this is a big game. It's what the weather's going to do, I think, over the next 24 hours.
Now tell me, you know, when we're sitting at home or I'm in the pit lane watching you go out, you've got such fabulous sort of torque. What's that like, getting that down onto the ground in the rain?
Justin, you know what it's like driving a big, powerful car. You know, I remember the days of you and the Viper throwing that thing around, and this is a similar sort of experience. You've just got a little bit too much power and torque for the grip you've got, and that just means you dance on the pedals that little bit, probably too much for a driver's liking. But in reality, the Audi diesel's very controllable considering.
Well, you know what, all your fans in America, everyone wishes you a great race, and I know this could be your year, I have a feeling, all right?
I certainly hope so. Certainly Scottish weather, isn't it?
Scottish weather it is. Well done, mate.
Yes, we all wish Alan well. Naturally, the LMP1 class grabs the headlines, but I tell you what, there is a lot of talk about GT1, and we'll focus on that when we come back to Le Mans. Coverage of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans is presented by Michelin, a better way forward. And by the new face of Audi. They're young, powerful and ready to play. Visit your local Audi dealer today to find one in your size. Well, over the decades here at Circuit de la Sarthe, there has been so many tremendous scraps amongst legendary marques, and that continues as we turn our focus to the GT1 class again. We find ourselves talking about Aston Martin and Corvette. And Calvin and Greg, this is going to be a gripping scrap.
It certainly should be. Calvin, maybe not the least of which is the reasons the numbers of cars. There are 5 Corvettes here trying to defend, and in Aston Martin's attempt to take it away, there are 6 of these legendary cars.
Well, Aston Martin, first of all, Greg, they have to beat this team. They are the pride and the heartbeat of America. Chevrolet, Corvette, they're on a roll here. They've won 3 in a row and 5 of the last 6, but both of these teams are worried about the Celine, this year run by the French Orica team. They won here in 2000. They have the experience to get to the top step again. But the stars are out. We're looking at David Brabham. He's in one of those Aston Martins, and he still searches for that first and elusive Le Mans victory.
In one of the supported cars, Christian Fittipaldi doing some of the driving, and in one of the Celines, you see Alain Prost, the legendary world champion. His son Nicholas has been very, very quick. Jump to qualifying, though, it was the 008 car. Christophe Bouchou was the driver who put that car on pole. And as you take a look at the top 5, you see Aston, Celine, Corvette, 3 different marques represented in the top 3. Leigh Diffey, as we look at this top 5, in a bit of a surprise, there's a name absent in that group.
There certainly is. Tomas Enge was denied his 6th consecutive GT1 class pole, but that won't bother the Czech. He is simply delighted to be at Le Mans this year. He is a star. He is gritty. He is so determined. The reason why, check this out, 2nd round of the American Le Mans Series at St. Petersburg in Florida, probably the worst crash of his career. He was hospitalized, sidelined for 6 weeks. It really is a miracle that he's even here. Chris Neville is with the Czech, and Chris, I'm sure he is glad to be here.
Lee, after that hard hit at St. Pete, Thomas was sent to Terry Trammell's orthopedic group in Indianapolis, and just a few short weeks after surgery, he was back at the racetrack competing and winning the American Le Mans event at Salt Lake City, and then once again competing last weekend at the 6 Hours of the Glen, a quick tune-up before Le Mans. Thomas, 24 hours of grueling racing in front of you, the ribs, the elbow, you gonna make it?
I hope so. First of all, I have to thank Dr. Tim Weber for the surgery. He did a really great job, and I was able to get back to the car, let's say, in 6 weeks after the surgery. So it was great, and I hope I can make it without any problem. You know, I'm just a bit afraid of mistakes, but I haven't done any mistake in the qualifying, so should be okay. Should be hard with the weather changes the whole weekend for everybody. So it's going to be all about not making mistakes and all about surviving.
Well, Corvette has been competing all season long, but Aston Martin saying they're just focusing on Le Mans. Will that strategy work?
From a young man who's making his mark in sports car racing to a fan favourite who has made his living in sports car racing, Ron Fellows. He's won ever since the inception of the American Le Mans Series. He's won the Rolex 24 at Daytona outright, and of course he has won here at Le Mans. He really is a sports car racing legend. However, his sports car days are in their twilight period. Could this possibly be the last Le Mans we see Ron Fellows in? Brian Till has more.
Well, thanks, Lee. You know, if there was a team captain here at Corvette Racing, it would have to be this man, Ron Fellows, standing here with his wife, Linda. Certainly the rose here with the two thorns, Ron. But, you know, Lee was just talking about you've done it all. You've done Daytona, you've won there, Sebring, Le Mans. But I've never seen weather conditions like this here this weekend. How do you guys as a team prepare for this? What do you do to adjust?
It's a lottery. You know, appropriately, I was just listening to an album on my iPad called Better Days by Edwin. And we've certainly had better days here for the weather. And it's unfortunately, it's a bit of a crapshoot, particularly when we get conditions like this where it rains hard, stops quickly, and then the sun dries the track out. So it's impossible to be a weatherman here under these conditions. And I think, you go with an intermediate tire, and if it rains hard, at least you can get yourself back into the pits.
Well, it is a crapshoot, as he said. They're guessing on tires right now. It'd be great to see him get another Le Mans victory, because the question still remains, will we see Ron Fellows back behind the wheel of a car here at Le Mans in the future?
And Dorsey Schroeder, obviously you've shared a lot of that history with Ron as a teammate, as a competitor, and as a friend. You sharing some of this emotion?
Yeah, I am, but you have to also remember, not only is Ronnie a great current day driver, but he is a great husband with his wife Linda there, and a great father. He is the ambassador to road racing of today, in my estimation.
Do you remember Sebring? Do you remember the GT2 finish? It's all they spoke about. And what about GT2 here last year, a surprise winner? We'll turn our focus to that right after this. Less than 10 minutes remaining until the 75th running of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans is go. And we are very much looking forward to that. Let's talk GT2.
Classic battle here between Porsche and Ferrari, and we have a lot of American drivers. Pat Long has joined up with Team IMSA Performance to get a go at it. Johannes Van Overbeek, of course, with Flying Lizard, in for their third appearance, trying to win for their very first time. Now, Tom Milner is with the Panos that won last year. It was a surprise win. Could it win again? Maybe. Tracy Krohn, Nick Johnson, and the young Colin Braun, they have teamed up in a very potent Ferrari. It could be the first win for Colin.
Yeah, Reese was sort of favored as the team here, and let's not forget Phil Collin driving with a team with tremendous experience and success here at Le Mans. Cycle Motorsport in their Porsche GT3. You can never count that out. Now we take a look at qualifying, though, and it was the Scottish Ferrari team, the Scuderia Ecos group, and it was young Andrew Kirkcaldy, the English-British GT star, who put that car on pole over a Porsche, and then the first of the Reese Ferraris. And I'll tell you what, one of the stars in this group, Leigh Diffey, is certainly one of America's emerging superstars.
Greg, you're absolutely right. So often we hear Nextel Cup stars say they'd love to do Le Mans, but after their NASCAR days are over, well, 18-year-old Colin Braun is going to do that in reverse. Your debut here at Le Mans, how's the week been?
It's been fantastic so far. I mean, all these French fans are just neat, and this whole racetrack is so cool. And, driving this Ferrari with all the heritage that it has at this historic track is so much fun.
And to remind the fans, you've just recently signed with Roush Fenway Racing to do some ARCA stuff, and it's the road to Nextel Cup. Are you excited about your future?
I'm so excited. To sign up with a team like Jack Roush and the Fenway Group is amazing, and looking forward to that. But this weekend's about winning this here race at Le Mans. It should be fun.
Well, Colin is in the Krone Racing with Rizzi Competizione Ferrari and Calvin, as we know too well. That finish at Sebring was thrilling.
Well, Lee, it was a classic Porsche Ferrari battle. This is the last lap after 12 grueling hours. We're on board with Jorg Bergmeister in the Porsche. Look at the battle down the back straightaway. Jamie Mellor's Ferrari had warm brakes, looked like it was defenseless, but Dorsey, he refused to give up.
Jamie goes to the inside. Now they start banging on each other. He's got a good run going. He might not have brakes, but he's willing to do all as he takes the win at the checkered flag.
The team reacts huge, and it was an amazing moment. Now, I guess, Chris, the question is Jorg Bergmeister, if not looking for revenge, looking for some closure?
Greg, and you said it, this class typically dominated by the Porsche until that breakthrough win by Panos last year. The grid this year full of Ferraris, more Ferraris than Porsche. However, Jorg, you know something about the Ferraris. It was you behind the wheel when you got into it with the Risi 430 at Sebring. If this race comes down to a battle like that, are you going to play your cards different?
Well, I don't think it will be that close. I mean, first off, we need a clean run till the end and without any major problems, and then we should be in good position to hopefully win the race. And I think I would play it fair again.
Well, Jorg Bergmeister and Flying Lizard trying to get Porsche back in victory lane.
People often ask, why is there so much excitement surrounding Le Mans? It's reasons like this.
And free, let it go! It's a Grand Prix from the beginning, ridiculous.
7 victories for Kristensen.
There's a checkered flag, and Davy Jones picks up the victory after 24 hours.
Flat man, the flat old man. What's the French for handbrake? Flat old man, I always thought.
Sounds good to me. Here come the Bentley boys. Listen to the crowd. Just look at those uniforms. It's terrible.
What's he going to do? Stick his head out the window and drive around 8.5 miles.
Oh, boy. That was stupid. That was as dumb a move as I've seen in a 24-hour race. Is that smoke? Yeah,
it's trouble.
The
Big trouble. This is a shock. I've never been as scared as I was out there. Oh! It has gone again.
Oh, there it is. It's into the trees.
Right. Unbelievable.
They need to get the doctor in here quickly. I think he almost fainted in his helmet. This is a scary moment for this team. They can change him back into this car in less than 7 minutes.
The most dominant performance we probably have ever seen at the Le Mans 24-hour race.
You had perfection here this weekend at 1, 2, 3. How does it feel?
This is so good, this feeling.
That is the sound of Le Mans 2006. Let the celebration begin.
In a matter of minutes, Le Mans is on. Let's talk LMP2, Greg.
Well, Lee, you say it's on, and it is certainly on in P2. It is a class with a privateer, and certainly a class where drivers have a lot of fun. Such is the story for American Chris McAllister. He is a vintage driver and is having a great time here at Le Mans. Also, Liz Halliday, who started the season in an Aston Martin, makes her return to the P2 ranks, driving for Noel Delabello's team. Now, this is interesting because that team has won here, but in the GT2 category. And there is Scottish-born American Bill Binney and his Binney Motorsports team. They, too, are going to be players. Let's take a look at the top 5 in qualifying, though. An ALMS regular, Adrian Fernandez, posted the top qualifying time. You look at the rest of the 5, their team car is 5th, and Michael Vergers reckons that if it's full wet, those Zytecs can run quicker than any car in P1 other than the diesels. Now, Brian Till, even though we don't see in this list any Porsches or Acuras, it doesn't mean, certainly in Acura's case, that they're not interested.
We don't see any yet, Greg, and I think that's the point. Adrian Fernandez is here. Tom Anderson, his partner at Lowe's Fernandez Racing, is here. Managing director. Tom, you're not here on holiday. What are you guys doing here? Are we going to see you soon?
Well, it's a reconnaissance mission, and we're very hopeful that we'll be able to bring the Lowe's Acura Lola here next year.
Well, and they've been running so strong in the ALMS. Great to see Acura if they show up here in 2008. Greg?
One of the amazing things about this racetrack is, of course, its length. It's some 8.4 miles in length. It's also very fast. 85% of the lap is done at full throttle. Now, past start-finish line up into the famous Dunlop curves at 171. This is the fastest corner on the course. It's called Tete Rouge, and this corner is taken at about 120 miles per hour. It's been reconfigured completely, all new asphalt, but also it's much faster and shorter. These are ditches or trenches that were put in to discourage you from going off the racetrack too far. Now, if you hit that at 120 miles per hour, you're going to do suspension damage without question. It's 21 meters shorter than it used to be, about 65 foot. It leads on to Mulsanne with more speed than ever before, and that being said, you hit 208 miles an hour as you run down the back straightaway toward Porsche curves. There's also those trenches down there in the Ford chicane, so watch out.
And I think one thing to look out for here on this circuit this weekend is going to be the weather. Since we arrived in town on Tuesday, it's been changing by the hour. Right now, the current temperatures are 63 degrees, but it changes by about 20 degrees within a few minutes. We look at the rain forecast, 70% today, 90% tomorrow. For sure, all of the drivers and teams are concerned about it.
It has been just, I mean, the classic, if you don't like the weather, wait 30 seconds. It's been that way here. It'll be absolutely dry, sunny, and then pouring rain. And there is a look at the famous Rolex clock and our honorary starters, as we are just literally seconds away now from the start of this 75th running. This is the president of the Department of Sarthe. That is Roland Duard, and he will be throwing the flag as the field starts to pair up once again. On the inside, on the pole, Sebastien Bourdais will be starting the car that teammate Sarrazin qualified on pole, the Peugeot 908 HDI. That is a turbo diesel. They're working their way through the first, now into the second of the two Ford chicanes. The pace car has pulled in. The 75th running of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans is green. We are underway. And it was from the outside that the Peugeot was able to take the swing, leading now into the Dunlop curves, watching some of the cars a little bit further back in the pack. There, the number 14, Dome, racing for Bourdais is off, and underneath goes, that is Capello, picks up the lead. Bourdais, a mistake in the first turn.
But a great, very tricky conditions here. The drivers are concerned. We saw Bourdais on his pace laps really got the hammer down, trying to get a feel for the race circuit, Dorsey. But all of the drivers just getting a feel around the circuit in this initial lap.
That was a great save. I mean, it was a mistake, no question, but he didn't throw it in the gravel trap. And we don't know about this circuit. It's not raining right here, but 8 miles around, you never know what you're going to find. Take a replay look at what's happened. Too much speed carries it. Now, that's a safe barrier area. That right there, that green, it looks like grass, is actually AstroTurf with asphalt underneath right on board here. See what it looks like.
This is Capello's car, the Audi.
And you saw one of the cones knocked out of the way already, one of those green cones. They said they wouldn't be here for an hour. One is not.
Dr. Ulrich from Audi said this is a race where you expect the unexpected. How about that? The first corner, the leader goes off.
I was going to say it's a 24-hour race, but the prestige of leading lap one here at Le Mans just a little bit too much to bear sometimes, and it caught Bourdais out. Again, a great save, and the field now whistling down the Mulsanne out of the first chicane, heading toward the second. In theory, exact mirrors of each other, but in reality, two very different types of corners.
Absolutely, but here we see the second of the Peugeots. This is the 007, right behind Capello. You can identify it by the red mirrors. Bourdais, who currently runs 4th or 5th, has blue mirrors on that Peugeot, so just a quick way of identifying the two cars. There he is. Bourdais comes out of the slipstream.
Take a look at the difference in the two cars. So the Audi, of course, open cockpit. We've seen it. We know how strong it is. But look at that tiny little Peugeot. It's like a Formula One car with a body on it.
As they head into the famous Mulsanne hairpin. Andrew.
Yes, I'm down in the Peugeot pit. They are not making any preparations for a pit stop from Bourdais. They feel that the car is okay. Obviously, we saw him go across the gravel, but they intend to continue. Nobody is on alert here at the moment. And the boss of Peugeot said in the press conference on Thursday, manage your expectations. This car only ran for the first time on December the 31st. It's been an incredible run up to this race here at Le Mans.
One of the concerns for the drivers, though, Dorsey, are these gravel traps. If any gravel comes onto the race circuit, they're like little glass slivers. They'll slice a tire in a heartbeat. So Bourdais has to be concerned. They have telemetry in the pit lane what will determine if there's any pressure loss in one of those 4 Michelins.
And that, of course, is crucial on an 8-mile lap. If you get a puncture, which is very, very similar, I mean, it's very likely to happen here, you get a puncture just past start-finish line, you have a long, long way to go to try to get any kind of remedy.
And a question to ask you guys, and I think I just saw this played out. One of the cars got up on a curb. It looked like smoke. I think it was water. These curbs are holding a lot of water. It's rained so much. That can really catch a driver out.
Well, another thing when I was out on the circuit the other day that you don't see from this picture is that inside those curbs that you're looking at, they've made this new type of curbing. Instead of making something protrude up from the track, which would take the splitter off, they've dug little indentations into the track, and those, of course, will hold water. So you're very right. He might have dropped into that and just picked that water up.
And this is a surprise. I think if you put a bet up and down pit lane this week, no one would have suggested there would be an Audi leading at the end of the first lap. Dindo Capello takes the Audi to the stripe.
And the lap he turned was a 2:56.8. That's not too shabby for the first lap here, especially considering the damp conditions that we've been enduring right now. And you can see he opened up already a 3.5-second lead as we hop on board with the Flying Lizard, the art car. And when you see this car from the outside, it is a very different paint scheme than it's been carrying, and there is a reason for that. Troy Lee Designs, Troy Lee himself, has done the art car for Le Mans this year, and it is spectacular.
Johannes Van Overbeek currently behind the wheel. Flying Lizard here, as Dorsey mentioned in the Open, their third visit to Le Mans. Had a podium on their first run, fourth last year. Johannes Van Overbeek very much on his game. Look at him fighting in the cockpit, trying to find grip with that Porsche.
And of course, that was the busiest part of the track that we were just looking at, the Ford chicane. Now, you go onto these long straightaways, you're full throttle, 85% of the lap, which is quite amazing when you think about an 8-mile circuit being that flat out. Trouble here.
There is the number 19, a problem for that car, one of the P1 entries. That is the Lola. That's one of the B0610 8ERs. Bob Barrage behind the wheel of that car started it up. That car had actually a very good run in the test days, Calvin, but problems now, and I don't know if that's just a cut tire or something more severe than that.
What a shame for Hugh Chamberlain and the boys. They had such an amazing finish to the event last year. They had a gearbox basically blown to pieces. They managed to put it back together, got Berridge out on the racetrack, managed to finish that very important last lap to be classified here at Le Mans, and managed to do it under the mandatory 6-minute time limit as well. So quite a story there, and I'm sure that Hugh and the boys will go to work and try and get that car back into the action, but not the start you're looking for.
Yeah, the Chamberlain team, whether it's Chamberlain Synergy or just Chamberlain in the past, absolutely built into the lore of Le Mans in many ways. Here are the two Peugeots, and there you can see the Audi of Capello quickly distancing itself, then the two Peugeots, then the other two of the Audis. And this is the run that many drivers say now with the chicanes in the Mulsanne is the one that takes your breath away the most. The run from Mulsanne hairpin down into Indianapolis, it is as fast as any part of the Mulsanne and even more dicey to drive.
It is, and look at Bourdais. He tucks out of Manassian slipstream and takes second place away. Looks like Bourdais wants to get that car to the front.
And the number 19 is in. Chamberlain's car has made it to the pits. Andrew?
Yes, indeed, and I can see the bodywork, the rear bodywork has obviously taken some sort of hit and has punctured the tyre, and that left rear, as you can see, is absolutely flat, as is the away here at Le Mans. They are fueling the car first before they do anything else. Now that fueling is over, obviously there wasn't much fuel to go in, and the left rear does not want to come off, and I think it's taken some sort of hit. Two mechanics working here to try and pull this tyre off, so this is the first of many pits dramas, I'm sure, this weekend here at Le Mans, and that tyre has finally come away. A fresh Michelin is going on, but they're going to have to look at the rear diffuser, because I think that is what actually caused the problem and actually cut into the tyre. So dramas here for Bob Berridge, who is the fastest of these three drivers in this number 19 Chamberlain Synergy car.
The diffuser is the part of the car underneath the back that helps create some downforce. I didn't see any body damage or any tire marks or anything on that car, so maybe he hit a curb, Calvin, and did that diffuser and it rubbed a hole in the tire.
Quite possibly. People who watch the American Le Mans Series, this is exactly the same car that the Dyson team ran in '06, so very familiar chassis, the Lola chassis. They'll be celebrating 50 years of manufacturing race cars next year, so they're going to have a big celebration then. But right now, Hugh Chamberlain wants to be assured by his crew that this car is safe to get it back on course. It's a long racetrack here, just shy of 8.5 miles. You don't want any drama getting the car back to pit lane.
Work continues, and one of the things you have to give credit to right away is those Michelins are amazing. When they get cut, when somebody hits whatever the problem might be, unlike some other tires, they don't just come apart and destroy the back ends of the car. He was able to bring it around. We are on board now with Capello. As I said, at the end of the first lap, he was 3.5 seconds up. At the end of lap 2, 5 seconds up, even though Bourdais got around Manassian and was able to put about 1.5 seconds on his teammate. He has not been able to do anything with Capello, and the primary reason is Capello has already turned to 3:33.6. That is a very quick race lap at any point of this race.
Very aggressive. Last year's fastest lap was about a 3:31, but Dorsey, the racetrack, as you saw when you ventured out there this week, Tertre Rouge is so much faster. The lap times were immediately cut by about 2 seconds with that and the extra grip from the new surface in other areas.
Yeah, they did, in fact, resurface several of our areas. Arnage has resurfaced. That was the slipperiest of all the corners, also the slowest. And when it rained, there was always a problem. Look, here's somebody getting out of the There's a car broke down over here on the left.
Looked like that Lamborghini. There's actually a different chassis. They crashed heavily in qualifying and got the permission, as one of the teams did last year, to actually replace the chassis on that. We saw it in the warm-up this morning.
Well, I think we've discovered over the years that the rules at Le Mans are sort of like the pirate code in Pirates of the Caribbean, more of a guideline. And I think the Lambos claimed parlay and were given a bit of a break. Oh, look at this move. Ducked underneath was Biela and picked up the spot on Manassian. And boy, that was aggressive. Very late move, Calvin.
It really was. Frank Biela, the fans at home may not recognize him in the car because his helmet design has actually changed for the first time in about 20 years. Manuel Pirro, his teammate, was giving him some grief about that, as he said, you're on your verge of retirement, now you change your helmet color. But Biela is third there. That's the second car in shot, followed now by Manassian, and then the third of the Audis.
Well, I would have thought that the Peugeot would have sent a rabbit out. I think maybe that's what they wanted to do. And unfortunately, Sebastien went off in turn one and has changed their plans on board now. Wow, he didn't know he was coming at all. That was Manassian getting the pass put on him. And you saw how he jerked the wheel, which had made him, it let me know that he didn't know it was coming.
You see that movement, that's the paddle shift that they're using there on the Peugeot. You see his hand, his left hand there, which is in the camera shot. That's as he's coming down the gearbox for Mulsanne corner.
You can also see how small that cockpit is by the size of the hands and the steering wheel. That is a very tiny workspace. Andrew, what's the final word, if any, on the Chamberlain Synergy car?
Well, the final problem actually is with the wiring to the rear lights. They've got a problem with the wiring because the flailing tyre cut that, and so they've just made a temporary repair, and Hugh Chamberlain just told me a bit later in the race they're going to have to come back and fix that properly, but they don't really know why that tyre cut. It looked to me as if the bodywork had been flexing, and certainly had been pressing against the side of the tyre, but just as you said, there wasn't any apparent bodywork damage on that car. But well, there's a long way to go yet, and everybody looking pretty relaxed at Peugeot, I have to say, at the moment.
I'm surprised, Dorsey, as you said, that we didn't see one of these Peugeots out front in the early going. Certainly Bourdais off attributed to that, but right now as we look at the pace, the Audi, the lead Audi of Capello is in the mid-33s, Bourdais running mid-34s, and Biela's right on his tail.
I think this is going to be a chess game, I think, between Audi and Peugeot. You know, I think you're right. I think they would have sent the rabbit out, but when the rabbit fell off the road, they said, okay, well, then let's just check up a minute and see what Audi does.
And by the way, we had just a moment ago, a moment by Jorg Bergmeister in the Flying Lizard car.
This is live with Johannes van Overbeek, who has recovered from a quick on and off, we understand, with the Flying Lizard team.
Here's the very fast corner up here. Oh, just locks it. There he goes across the new section. He would have been in the gravel last year, Calvin. That's all new pavement.
And no harm, no foul there. As long as you don't change position, you're allowed to just continue. So that's the nice thing about some of these safety changes to the race circuit. Much better for the drivers.
Thank you. That was, of course, Van Overbeek with that very distinctive helmet, and has gathered it up and is back and underway at this point. And as you take a look here, we're also seeing in the background there in the fifth spot, Lucas Luhr, one of the young guns Dorsey talked about, looking at trying to find a way around Manassian as well. So right now, Diesels occupy the top five. Luhr looking to the inside. I don't think he was going to quite get that done. Nope, but was certainly showing the nose as we watch Frankie Biela chasing down Sebastien Bourdais. You take a look here, some of the great shots, and finally a bit of blue here at the 75th running of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. Here are your top 10. Welcome back to the 75th running of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans, Circuit de la Sarthe. And the Rabbit is free and clear at this point. Dindo Capello has just turned down a 3:31.1, 3 minutes 31.1 seconds. The margin now, Cal, over 12 seconds. And Frank Biela is taking a run and a pass on Bourdais.
He does. It's now an Audi 1-2, and Bourdais had to take to the grass there a little bit. Nice aggressive move by Frank. He's really been on his game this week, and you have to wonder, we're talking to Frank, he's kind of on a part-time drive this year, Dorsey, with this race in Sebring as well, some DTM action. He needs a sports car ride for the rest of the year. That gets you fired up.
He was fired up right there. He did the get out of my way kind of pushover. Absolutely. This is a lot of talent that has no ride, so he's going to try to prove something.
You talked about the Rabbit, Greg, in terms of being out front, but who would have believed that the number 2 car of Capello would be running laps some 3.5 seconds faster than the Peugeots?
And Brian Till right now, Biela jumping into second, is trying to clear them as well.
Both those Audis are flying, but the thing you guys need to keep in mind is, remember, this is the first full dry that we've had all week long, so we really haven't seen what these cars will do. Now, back at the pretest, you got to know everybody was holding their cards a little close to the vest, but right now, the guys at Audi letting it all hang out. But as I said, this is the first chance anybody has really had to stretch their legs. I'm looking at the clouds. They're coming in. And Calvin and Dorsey, you can talk about this. 8.5 miles or so around this Le Mans circuit. This is one of those racetracks where it can be beautiful and sunny on one end and raining really hard on the other. That could come into play here before long. The clouds are building.
I'm kind of surprised in a way that they don't have spotters somewhere around the course so that these guys can get radio communications to them.
Here we're looking at the battle with the LMP2 guys. Started from the pole. This is Adrian Fernandez on his first visit to this circuit. As we saw his partner, Tom Anderson, talk about that they would really love to be here with the Acura cars that they're running over in the States for next year. So very much a reconnaissance mission, but what a way to start on the pole and leading early.
And right behind him, that Gulf-sponsored and liveried car is Warren Hughes. And Warren, a former MG factory driver, and is throwing down some very good laps at this stage. That's the Zytek. Oh, that's made the pass. That's Fernandez's teammate Vergers, actually, has come up. And he was the one who said, if it's full wet, if it goes full wet, they think they can lap faster than any car out there other than the 5 diesels in these Zyteks, which apparently are just magnificent in damp conditions. They don't look too bad in the dry either.
They look really strong. 2 sister cars here, so they should be identical. But Michael Vergers certainly has a lot more experience. And he sticks it in there, gets hard on the brakes, and just spins the car around. That was very aggressive, particularly on your teammate, Dorsey.
Yeah, that was leaving no margin of error whatsoever, and he's lucky he didn't slide up underneath and make contact. A simple spin, but he's having difficulty now getting refired.
Goodness me, who would have believed it? Look at how deep he goes in on the brakes. Adrian is on line. There's nowhere for him to go, and he just got a little bit harder on the brakes. Carbon fiber brakes, and just gets more rear brake bias. Really pins the nose there and turns it around. This is the Krone Racing Ferrari off course here.
That was pretty good lockup off the front tires. He might have square tires off that one.
Tracy Krone on his second visit to this race circuit, so he needs to recover there and check out those flat spots on the front end.
Had Michael Vergers made that right-hand corner, he would have no way made the left one, would he?
That was close to taking both of the cars out for the team. They would have not been very happy about that.
Well, you talked about the, I mean, Vergers incredibly experienced here, also very quick, and I think that he may be feeling just as a little, I don't know, frustration is quite the right word, but with the speed of Fernandez, because Vergers has been the guy in that team, and suddenly Adrian shows up, pips him for pole, quickest in test day, although they had actually equal times.
Looking at our leader here, this is Dindo Capello. Look at the dust offline.
Looked like oil dry that somebody had been put down and no one's run through it.
Well, we did have the vintage race here this morning, Dorsey, and watching now, those things were blowing up pretty regularly, so there's probably some dirt and grime offline.
Yeah, I think you're hit the nail on the head there. We did see some blown engines in the old vintage race.
That car that he just went by is one of the 2 orange LNT Panos entries, and we talked about at the top of the show the American Tom Miller behind the wheel of one of those cars, at least in terms of the driving lineup, and you could see though how quickly, he just kind of went right underneath the curbing there in turn 1, but obviously that's why he's throwing down some quick laps.
Dindo Capello leads. He was at the Audi press conference here yesterday and said he's very superstitious. Last year they didn't win the race. They had yellow on the car. All the drivers said we don't want any yellow on the car, and Dindo said, I don't want to qualify this year. I don't mind starting, but he thought that was a bad omen in terms of qualifying the car. The couple of years he's been on the pole, he didn't get the result at the end of 24 he was looking for.
Isn't that funny how drivers are so superstitious about, sir? I was never superstitious, were you, Cal?
No, not too much, because that can get to you. I mean, if you think you got the wrong pair of socks on, you get to the circuit, what's going to happen?
Now Leigh Diffey's got the wrong pair of socks on.
Yeah, he's had those on all week. Very dodgy. Hopefully he changed them, though, Dorsey.
I hope so, too, when he gets up there.
That is the pole sitting and class leading GT1 008 Aston Martin. Again, Christophe Bouchou, who's really a GT shoe. The guy is just amazing, and you can see they're already being caught up by some more of the prototype field. The Celine right behind him, just getting passed by the Chamberlain Synergy car that's working his way back up through the pack.
Actually, the whole GT1 field is involved in that deal right there. You look back, the Corvettes are back there not too far behind.
Sohail Yari, by the way, behind the wheel of the Celine, sitting in second, right behind the number 19.
Bouchou, bit of a surprise in grabbing the pole position, run by Labra, but essentially a third pro-drive car. None of the entries are allowed to have more than 2 cars under the same banner. Chris.
When Tracy Krohn brings the 99 car into pit lane, going to get 4 new Michelins put on this car. Obviously, flat spot on the racetrack. The team putting fuel on the car right now. Now they've got to wait till that fueling is done, and then the car will go up in the air for the tires. Now Tracy Krohn, second start here at Le Mans, one of the American drivers who just competed at the 6 Hours of the Glen last weekend, having a great run here. And this team hoping to try and do a little bit better than they had last year, where they ended up in a gravel trap and had more problems there. The sister car, the 97 Jamie Mello, also might be coming to pit lane. They're experiencing some problems with the passenger side door of that Ferrari F430, and Mello might have to bring it to pit lane as that door continues to open on the racetrack. Tracy Krohn back down and away.
Last year here, Tracy drove, of course, but in a Porsche, and he just says this Ferrari, Dorsey, is so much more balanced, and he's very much got a much better comfort zone with the car around this race circuit.
So as we hop on board once again with Johannes van Overbeek, the Flying Lizard car, working his way around this legendary circuit. Some great onboard shots going to be provided by, well, certainly a number of cars, but this one in particular. And I'm going to give you a look at the top 3 in each of the 4 classes running here at Le Mans. And out front, it is the number 2 Audi leading overall. Speed's live coverage of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans is brought to you by Lexus and their pursuit of perfection, and by Valvoline, 100 years under the hood. Welcome back, everybody, and watching the goings-on at the very front of the field right now. Basically, this is the battle between the Peugeots and the Audis. The 5 diesels continue to run in the top 5 spots overall. And by the way, we'd like to just, if we could take a quick moment at the top here to say a big thanks to the folks at Interface Television for providing the world feed and the great coverage that we're getting right here. And here is a look at Dindo Capello, and he has, that margin is just immense. He has continued to throw down blindingly quick laps, basically 18 seconds now, and the only guy who's gotten close to him is teammate Biela, who has gotten within about a second and a half.
Well, if it's the rabbit versus the hare, nobody bit.
And quite surprising here to see these Peugeots currently running at this pace. Everyone thought that they would be in the lead at the end of the first hour, maybe at the end of 12, and then the Audis would come back at them. But with 3 cars that Audi are running this year, certainly you could change strategies throughout the team.
And by the way, of course, the team, if you've watched our coverage of Le Mans in the past few years, the Pescarolo team has been a major player for the P1 and overall win. And they are certainly here this year, although they've been overshadowed a bit. And Andrew, understand development early in pit lane.
Yes, indeed, but not one to get worried about. Of course, Pescarolo finished second here the last 2 years, which is a very good effort from a very underfunded team. The 17 car came in, Greg. It was all part of a strategy. They short-fueled it at the start, and so it just made a stop to get it out of sequence. So nothing to worry about there. Jorg Pescarolo, as you guys know, has been very voluble the last week about the regulations. He just feels that the diesels have too much power and they should be restricted to give the petrol boys and gas boys a chance. So all calm down at Pescarolo, and I've just wandered back now to the Peugeot pit, and I'm expecting the first pit stop probably in about 15 minutes down here.
All right, Drew, thank you very much. And that's a very good point, too, of the things. They have said, everybody else in P1 have made the comment, yeah, we're not diesel fast, but we're fast. There is certainly a discrepancy. And the other thing is with that early stop, out of sequence, if they were caught in traffic and the like, but we've talked about it before, we really haven't had anywhere near this long a stretch of dry running, really since we set foot here. And I wonder if people are just trying to figure out fuel strategies and tire wear.
Sure, you don't want to bring in both cars on the same lap. I think that's a little bit early at the end of 8 laps to bring in the car in. You've got quite a margin there. Of course, we have the pace laps, so that eats up some fuel. You want to get a good read. I mean, if you run out of fuel here, Frank Biela did it here back in 2004. There's no way home with them only by foot at that point, so you don't want to risk anything.
And Lucas Luhr now is taking a run at trying to put the Peugeots back to 4th and 5th and has done it. So it is an Audi 1-2-3 right now, as Luhr in the number 3 Audi, the young gun car, if you will, has made the move. So Audi sort of, I don't know if they're making a point or what here. They're certainly doing just that. And I'll tell you what, these young guys, Luhr, Rockenfeller, and Prima has been he's been a sketchy fast, but the others, they have all been very quick.
Well, of course, Mike Rockenfeller and Lucas Luhr have so much more experience than Prima in this type of racing, certainly sports car in general, and even prototypes a little bit. This is Prima's first visit to Le Mans. Rocky and Lucas have won here in GT2, of course, so they have the experience here. And it's just a tough road. I mean, jumping into a sports car, Dorsey, and developing that mentality takes a little bit of time for Prima.
Well, it sure does, and you have to also think about the fact that they got to test a lot of miles before. Prima has not been able to do the testing that the other two have in this Audi. It's a different beast. I mean, you're talking about a car that has huge, huge torque. It's not an easy thing to drive. If we see a wounded car back there, looks like making its way toward pit lane, everybody by cleanly.
Here we see that fight for 3rd position. Biela, meanwhile, has peeled off into the pits, so these guys will take over 2nd.
Speed limit, nice slow run down, and I think Brian Till is waiting in Biela's pit.
Greg, Frank Biela has done this before. He has won this before 4 times. If he and teammate Emanuele Pirro can win it again, it'll be 5 victories at Le Mans. It'll tie them with Derek Bell for 3rd on the list for all-time wins. Now, Audi running 3 cars this year, the first time since 2003, or 2002, I should say, that they've run 3 cars. So what that means is they've got to run a little bit of different fuel strategy. Biela, no tires, fuel only, he's away. But as I was saying, they've got to run a different fuel strategy. They can't bring all 3 in at one time.
That's very important. We were talking to Ed Turner, who is the engineer on the number 1 car, just the other day, and he said you can bring 2 in at once, but as which 2? You don't want to cross over when you're trying to bring a car in whilst one is still sitting there.
This, by the way, is the Cruiser Motorsport Pescarolo Judd of Burgess de Portales and Norbert Seidler that is making an early stop as well. Everybody exploring different options.
Well, it looked to me, I'm not sure because I just got a glimpse of it, but it looked like he might have had intermediate rain tires on that car that he just took off. If that's the case, that's why he's in the pit so far. I'm not sure about that. Maybe one of the pit guys could find out, but it looked like an intermediate rain that was pulled off the front.
Well, you want to play it safe. The intermediates will last, and that'll give you that little bit of grip if you should have any showers in the opening lap. So I think those 2 Peugeots have actually switched positions. I believe the number 07, that's Manassian, has taken over 3rd spot from Bourdais. We understand Bourdais will be pitting this lap, however.
We're hearing indications from the pit lane that we might expect the number 8 Peugeot and the number 1 Audi to be swinging into the pits as well. So it looks like everybody just playing it very cautious here in the early going.
Well, of course, Peugeot has 2 cars as well, so they don't want them pitting at the same time. They'll pit one of them early, get them out of sequence. These guys, it's going to be a cat and mouse game between these 2 teams.
It is, and when we look at the amount of laps, Capello currently has 9 on the board, so if he does 1 more, that will be 10 plus the pace lap, so that's 11. It's kind of cautious, but talking to the engineers at Audi, with the diesel power, if you run at full power, it really costs you a lot of fuel economy. Last year, they had 90 liters of fuel. It's got a 10% reduction down to 81, which is about 21.5 gallons, so that certainly reduces the length they can stay on track. We thought 13 laps for the Audis would be the number, but if you start to run at full power, that could come down to 12 or even lower than that. So we saw Capello really run some scorching lap times. He would have been using a lot of diesel fuel.
And in pre-test, the Peugeot only showed its hand to 10 laps. It would come in at 10-lap intervals. Now, we don't know that that's all it can do. I don't think that's all it can do. I think that's all they wanted to show that it would do.
Whoa, that was tight.
That is the Binny Motorsports car. Obviously had no clue that he was coming up on him that fast. And Lucas Luhr, a big lift. And at least he sensed that coming and did a great job to avoid some contact.
Well, it's been raining here for 2 days, so I mean, you don't want to be out in the grass as we see the Audi making its way down pit lane. They're all the way down at pit out, as they have been every year.
Dindo Capello brings the number 2 Audi, the lead car, in. This will be the first of many stops. We expect close to 30 pit stops over the 24 hours here at Le Mans. Capello making some type of a signal with his hand, like he's got some type of a problem, and I see him working the shifter back and forth. So as he struggles, it looks like a little bit. He's pointing at the car. He said, never mind. Perhaps he wanted a drink. They too will not take tires, fuel only. And now Capello back down and away. Andrew, what's going on at the other end of pit road?
The number 8 car has just stopped to my feet, indeed, in front of his engineer, Christophe Besset, and this is a stop for fuel only, so they're going to double stint these tyres on this first short run. Engineers just checking things, but definitely staying on these same tyres. This car looks absolutely fabulous. It looks like a jet fighter, I think. Wonderful machine, and off he goes. The first pit stop is complete for Peugeot.
One thing that all of these teams have to be concerned about is leaving that pit box. There was a regulation last year, but this year in the regulations, Dorsey, they've been very stern about wheel spinning away from the pit box. They say it's a safety issue with the amount of people we see down there on pit road. They don't want any issues, but if you make a wheel spin situation and the stewards see it, it's a 3-minute stop-and-go penalty. That's massive, like a lap.
Everyone will have had to change their launch control. Launch control is a button you push on the dash, and when the car drops off its air, the air pressure comes off the air jacks, the car launches, and you go out there spinning the wheels. That can't be done anymore.
All right, action. Today, the baddest racing in all of NASCAR is only on Speed. The NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series races into Michigan, the home of horsepower, to do battle for 200 action-packed miles. Live coverage begins today at 2:30 Eastern, 11:30 Pacific, only on Speed. We hop on board with Dindo Capello, the number 2 Audi that led so impressively early. They have, of course, stopped, so he's back in the order just a little bit. And Lucas Luhr assumed the point, and they are going by one of the Corvettes, which, by the way, we anticipate the Corvettes and/or Aston Martins to be pitting very soon. And Calvin, off air during the break, you were talking about impressed with the margin that they've been able to stretch it.
Well, it's quite incredible, the pace that the Audis have right now, and very surprised that Lucas Luhr is able to stretch it one more lap. He's got 11 under his belt. When he comes in at the end of this one, which we believe he will be 12 plus the pace lap, so that's a good indicator. Talking to the Audi engineers, they said, look at our second stint of his dry. They'll give you a true indication of how many laps we can run, but Dorsey, looks like the cards are on the table. 13 looks good.
I think 13, no problem. Maybe 14. You know, they always hold little in reserve.
Just saw a shot of the Luc Alphand Adventures car, the Corvette, the C5R, which won in the last year that the C5 ran here with Corvette Racing. This is the RML, Ray Malek Limited P2 entry. Andy Wallace, one of the drivers in this car, has made their stop.
Looks like fuel only. Tommy Erdos behind the wheel. These guys going for 3 straight.
Yeah.
Unbelievable to win 3 straight in this category. These cars seem so fragile over the course of 24 hours. But, I mean, this class will take on a new face next year if we see Porsche and/or Acura in the thick of this battle.
Yeah, Mike Newton quite quick, but Tommy Erdos, the young Brazilian, is a rocket quick driver, as we know, is Andy Wallace. And here comes Lucas Luhr from the lead, is bringing the number 3 Audi down into pit lane as well.
Got yellow flags all over back there, guys. We'll have to take a look and see what that's about.
And as you can see, a long pit lane up, but we have car has had a slight off.
That's why they were waving those yellow flags out.
And rather vigorously, considering the where and why he's parked there. Meanwhile, here we go into the pits. Brian?
Lucas Luhr brings the car in. Remember, both he and Mike Rockenfeller have won at Le Mans before, but in the GT class, what a stellar job this young driver lineup is doing. And we were talking about it at lunch the other day, guys. Remember, Mike Rockenfeller only 23 years old, Lucas Luhr only a few years older. Tom Kristensen won his first Le Mans at 30. What will these guys do if they stay with a powerhouse like Le Mans? Looks like, or like Audi, looks like a routine stop here, guys. Fuel only, and Lucas Luhr back underway. Careful not to spin the tires. Andrew.
Problems down here for the Barazzi, the golf-coloured car driven by Michael Verges, the Zytek. That has been pushed back in the garage. Michael is staying in the car. You saw it make that audacious move, but I don't think that's a problem. They're looking at the rear engine area there. They've just taken the rear deck off and working here on this particular car, which was, of course, briefly leading that category.
All right, thanks very much, Andrew. And talking, going back to talking about Luhr and those, Luhr, of course, has some experience in prototypes running with the Porsche the full season last year, so that his pace may not be totally surprising, but what we've seen out of Rocky, who doesn't have a lot of prototype experience, and Premont, who's a Formula driver, of course. Let's check in, though, with Chris Neville. You see the number 64 Corvette Racing entry has pitted. Chris?
That's right, Greg. Lots of action in GT1. The 008, the 007, and the 64 were all in. All cars took fuel and tires except for the 007. Just fuel on that car, so Peter Cox deciding, let's try and double stint those tires at least. And now the 63 setting up, so lots of action in GT1 right now. We should anticipate Jan Magnussen at any point in time.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And meanwhile, watching up front now, the two Peugeots getting some great coverage on board here at the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. We'll be right back. Tomorrow on Speed, step into the wind tunnel with Dave Despain. Don't miss the biggest names, the biggest opinions, and of course the biggest mouths all season long. And, of course, Dave is on hand to fan the flames of controversy. Wind Tunnel with Dave Despain tomorrow at 9 Eastern, live on Speed. Welcome back, everybody, and watching as things have sort of cycled through the pit stops, and it is again Capello out front, and not only out front, Cal, he is going extremely quickly, a 3-minute 30.1 on his last lap. We are looking there at the number 3 of Lucas Luhr, but Capello is absolutely hooked up. Now, while we were in the break, things were quite busy in pit lane. Let's go down to pit lane and see if we can find out what went on. Andrew?
Yes, indeed. Well, we're watching the 32 car. That's the Michael Verges Golf Black Zytek, which was running at the front of LMP2 car, the LMP2 class, sorry. And a problem, it's the gear linkage, or the gear shift. It's got a paddle shift, which Zytek produced themselves. In fact, Zytek produced the whole car, the whole engine, and indeed the shift mechanism as well. But problem here with the shift mechanism of that car. They thought they'd fixed it. They wheeled the car back onto the pit road. Then Michael tried to get gears, couldn't get them, and pushed the car back in the garage. So obviously some software problem probably. When you were driving, Dorsey, did you have software problems with your gear change?
No, I don't think I had that problem. I had linkage problem.
Different transmission back in our days, Dorsey.
Chris Neville, what happened on your end of the pits?
Greg, while we were away, the 63 came in. Jan Magnussen staying behind the wheel. Just fuel for that car. Unlike the 64, Magnussen decided to double stint those Michelins. The only other thing the team did do was remove some tape on the side mirrors on the car where there's venting that go into the driver. So everything taped up because of the rain here, but since it's been dry, they decided to open that up and get some air in there to Magnussen. Other than that, we're just waiting for this 897, the Risi Competizione Ferrari, coming to pit lane. Brian, what do you have?
We were gone. The 80 of Johannes van Overbeek was in right now. The number 87, the pole-sitting GT2 car, is in. The Scuderia Cos Ferrari with Tim Mullen behind the wheel. He'll take tires and fuel and get back out. Interesting to note that when Jorg Bergmeister took over from Johannes van Overbeek, as they dropped the car, he lit up the tires and went. crew calling on the radio, slow down, slow down, slow down. He left about a 4-foot skid mark on the way out. And the official standing right there pointed at the team and said, no, no, don't do it again. You guys talked about it. The next one will cost 3 minutes.
And by the way, just watching the shots here, we were watching the Aston Martins working the Porsche curves, bright sunlight, getting little snips of rain here down in pit lane, such as the difference on an 8-mile track as we ride on board now, I believe, with Jorg Bergmeister. No, it works, I get it right. And Jorg, of course, former winner here, tremendous experience, and you can see you get on those curbs, and Dorsey, you described them, the way that they fall away. They're graduated, and if you get way on those curbs, it's an incredibly rough ride.
Well, what they've done is the lead edge of the curb is above the ground. It's a bump. As you go beyond the bumps, they get steeper as they go. Then if you fall off to the other side, then there's divots. They've dug holes in the ground, which the drivers say really upsets and gets your attention.
You have to be so careful with those curves. You saw it there coming out of the first chicane where that little gully is. There's a ton of water right there. We've just been immersed in water this week with the rain, and I think this is the longest dry period we've had leading up to the green flag here today and throughout this first hour. Here we're looking at one of the Aston Martins.
There seems to be, I was just watching, as they came out of under the Dunlop Bridge, right before they, about halfway between the Dunlop Bridge and the S's, there is a significant bump there that I haven't seen here in the past either. So, and now they're coming up onto some pretty spectacular traffic from the GT2 category.
Some of this repaving they've done at the lead edge or the falling off edge of where the pavement starts and ends. It is in fact a pretty abrupt bump. I see the prototypes sparking pretty heavily at night. We'll see that later tonight.
Now let's bring you up to date at this stage with our Valvoline race recap here at the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. Audi currently first, second, and third, and took them a little while to get there, but boy, have they been at the front and looking awfully strong. Out of the race already, the number 53, Apicella, Yamanishi, and Hanoi. That was the JLOC, Japanese Lamborghini Owners Club, Lambo, and they had problems, a huge wreck in the actually the qualifying session. Apicella, lucky to walk away from it, struggled to get that car back in. They made it out late in the warm-up, but obviously it did not last. So it's really the only car out at this stage, and we're getting an update. Yes, indeed, the number 97, the Risi Competizione Ferrari is making its way back in and heading toward Chris Neville.
That's right, Greg. The Jamie Mello bringing the 97 Risi Competizione Ferrari to pit lane, and you can, or at least I can see the right side of that car. The window is askew, so they're going to have to replace that. They've got a door ready. It was not the door, it was actually the window that has come loose. So they're going to take time here as soon as the fuel is done to change that door. One of the crew members holding a replacement door. Now, this isn't a production door that he's going to be putting on. This is a door that is custom made. It's all made of carbon fiber, weighs less than 10 pounds. I'm sure it weighs probably about $100 or so a pound, or maybe even $1,000 a pound, the way that these guys can spend money on carbon fiber parts. But the team filling the car up, Jamie Mello staying behind the wheel. They do not have any Michelins out right now, so it looks like he's going to double stint the tires, so this should be a very quick change on the door. All they have to do is just get those pins to release the door that is on there, and then the next door will slide right on, and Mello will be back out on the racetrack.
Well, I mean, that's what happens when you're cruising along there just under 200 miles an hour, you know.
Take a look at what he's been dealing with here. Right there, third car.
And you see the window's blown out. There's so much pressure from the inside of that car. It's actually bowed the window out of its framework, and it's not going to go back in by itself.
That will definitely disrupt the airflow to that rear wing, which is very critical on these race cars. So typically it'll give you a little bit less downforce on the back, so he would have been fighting that during this first stint.
And one of the things to keep in mind, it wasn't that long ago we were talking about GTS, now GT1 cars running 185, 190 miles an hour here at Le Mans. Now the GT2 cars are approaching that as well. So that aero package is incredibly crucial, even in the GT2 category. He is back out, and take a look at our class leaders, top 3 in each of the 4 categories.
We are back at Le Mans. Welcome back to Circuit de la Sarthe, to Speed's live and continuing coverage. Leigh Diffey with you here, folks, along with Calvin Fish and Dorsey Schroeder in the booth. We thank Greg Creamer for the opening stint. What was it? A very exciting opening stint, wasn't it? And now the rain starts to fall. We've got Brian Till and Chris Neville and Justin Bell down on pit road, trying to do their best in this inclement weather here in central France. As we highlight the class leaders for you, it's been a dynamic start from Audi, hasn't it? 1, 2, and 3. There they are in a very strong, very solid start, just showing Peugeot who and what they are dealing with. The 40 car is in second, is leading the P2 class, I should say, and that is strong so far. Very promising start from Adrian Fernandez in that Zytek for Barazzi Motorsport, and then the defending winners for Ray Malek Limited. RML running third in the P2 class. How about in the GT cars, in GT1 and GT2? Well, it's looking good for the Aston guys at the moment, and the best of the Corvettes, it's the trio of Magnussen, O'Connell and Fellows who are the best for the Americans at the moment, sitting third in that class. And then a very promising showing, and there's been a lot of talk about this GT2 car. It's IMSA Performance Matmut. It's a Porsche team. They're paired, they're joined in with Team Orica in the same garage in a sponsorship and engineering combination. It's Richard Leitz, American Patrick Long, and Frenchman Raymond Narak. And we've got a problem here, and naturally so, with this rain coming down. There's your race leader, Dindo Capello, and it was the Binny Motorsport prototype in trouble.
Well, we saw the sprinkles just a few moments ago, and this is what we've been seeing all week long, Dorsey, and this is where the drivers have to be so careful. You just got to analyze the situation. Are you going to get more rain? And you almost can't go slow enough on slick tires once that rain starts to pelt.
And it rains different places around this 8-mile course. We've seen that this rain pattern that we're stuck in, it doesn't rain a little bit. It just opens up and pours, but it pours in a very small area, and then the rest of the racetrack's dry. It's the worst condition a driver could be under, not knowing. As you're going 200 miles an hour in some places, you know, is it wet?
Directly behind us here, directly behind the front straight and grandstand is Le Mans Airport, which is very busy, of course, on this race weekend, and we're just getting reports that there are dark clouds and very threatening weather fast approaching this track, so that's not a good sign.
That is the leader, Dindo Capello, skiving his way through traffic here this afternoon. What a great opening stint he put together. Took advantage of Bourdais' slip up into the first chicane and never looked back. He was using a lot of diesel fuel during the opening stint. He pitted first amongst all of the Audis, but right now looking strong.
Let's get a Peugeot update. Here's Andrew Marriott.
Yes, indeed, Lee. The Peugeot squad have just brought their rain tyres out onto pit apron. I can see Mark Hene already helmeted up, so I suspect that they're going to be making a stop very soon, and when they do that stop, they will do a driver change. But looking at the pit board at the moment, it doesn't say box, which is what they put on the French pit board here to tell them to come in. But as I stand out here, Lee, there's just still a patter of rain, but as you say, all the awnings are now flapping like mad because the wind is really coming in. I'm sure it's going to bring that rain squall to this pit lane, and then we're going to have a lot of activity.
We've been talking a lot about the weather, a lot about the rain. It's exactly what caught American Bill Binney out. Take a look at this. This is one of the American entrants.
Just runs wide there. This is where Sebastien Bourdais went off on the very first lap, very first corner. And it's like ice. You just really can't describe how slippery it is when you have no grooves in those tires.
Time to visit Risi Competizione, Chris.
Nick Johnson getting behind the wheel, taking over for Tracy Crone, his teammate in the Daytona prototype. In the Rolex Series, Nick Johnson deciding, let's go with some intermediate wet tires on this Ferrari. It looks like the team having a bit of a mistake here. They were initially going to go with full wets on one side of the car. They're putting intermediates on the other side. They're going with full wets, and now the rain is coming down harder, so this might be a mistake here to go with this intermediate tire. They probably should go with the full wet, seeing that there's a large bank of storms coming in. When you take a look at the computer, Nick Johnson, great driver in the rain, won the 6-hour just a couple years ago in just an awesome drive in the rain.
Well, I'm not sure there, Chris, but it looked like the left front guy was putting a full wet on, and the left rear guy was putting an intermediate on.
That's a disaster. I mean, you can't believe the difference, not only in the tread pad, but also in the compound of the tire. An intermediate is very much like a slick tire in terms of the harder compound. A wet tire is soft and gummy, so Nick will really be struggling if they did do that, Dorsey.
Cal, did you spot what I spotted, boys? Safety car out on track?
Well, That's interesting. We'll see more about that in a minute. Those tires you're talking about, a full rain has full tread, very deep treads. The tread sipe's very big to channel the water out. It's a bit harder or softer of a compound than that intermediate, which looks more like a hand cut. Softer compound gives you more grip. There, right there is a full rain. You see the big tread sipes cut into it.
There's different compounds as well. I was talking to Mike Roggenfeller this morning. They essentially have two different block patterns. The little blocks there has a different pattern for the wet. There's two of those, two compounds in each, and then intermediate as well. There we see that dome struggling again. May have been a spin coming on that front straightaway.
The T2M Motorsport prototype. Chris, what do you have?
Lots of action over at Corvette. The 63 just in. Magnussen going with that intermediate tire. Also Gavin in, just getting that intermediate tire. A couple of the Aston Martins coming in. So it looks like most of these teams right now in the GT1 deciding to go with the intermediate until it gets a little bit more wet out there.
I haven't identified yet why there's a full course caution. It's not raining hard enough, Calvin, to put a full course out. I don't think so. I mean, they don't normally do such a thing. So there's got to be a problem on circuit that we haven't found yet.
And Le Mans is one of those unique places where they have multiple safety cars because of the 8.4 miles, the length of this enormous track. Andrew.
Do you know, Lee, that rain squall has seemed to pass over. It's not actually raining now. So if you're into gambling, maybe you just leave your car out now. Number 7 Peugeot is coming in, I think, but they have just taken the stop board for the 8. Well, they're hovering. They can't make up their mind. 7 is definitely coming for tyres, but right now it's dry in the pit lane. It's unbelievable weather we've had for the last 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's the way it's been. It fluctuates so aggressively as we see a lot of activity in pit lane. You saw some damage on the front of the Brooke Gladdy P2 prototype. Here it is, the Radical, the only Radical in the race, and this is Tim Greaves behind the wheel. And a big weekend for him. Tim's making his Le Mans debut, and he's one of the investors, one of the owners of the Radical brand, and that's certainly not where he wanted to be at this stage of the race. Andrew.
We had a collision in the pits between the 33 Zytek and the 24 car, and meanwhile lots of activity here. We've got both Peugeots have come in, they're fueling them up. We're just waiting to see what sort of tyres they put on. The collision was just a small one, but there was a big lock up in the pits and just a slight touch there. But now we're watching to see what Peugeot are doing, and the 7 car has gone out, and I think that they have decided not to put the rain tyres on. They're staying on the slicks, both 7 and 8, and I reckon that's a good call.
Number 1, Audi is in. Frank Vila out. Emanuele Pirro in. They too stay on slicks. Once again, the rain has stopped. It is dry on pit road, so a real gamble, as you guys can talk about, Dorsey and Calvin. A rain tire does not like the dry. It will overheat very, very quickly. You're better off to try to run a slick in damp conditions than you would be a rain in dry.
Absolutely, Brian. And of course, they do have several options in terms of the compound, the softness of the tire that they can put on with the slick. So they may drop it down a compound just so it gets into its heat temperature zone a little bit quicker there. And there we see the work continuing on the 21 machine. Is that the 21? I'm not sure.
No, it's a 24. It's Liz Halliday who started the race. This is the Noel Del Bello Courage AER, serviced in pit lane, and it will be sent shortly. Quite frantic scenes here at Le Mans. Amazing what a small rain shower can do, but it appears as quickly as it came, it is going. It's just how it's been over the past few days. Extremely frustrating for the teams and drivers. And indecision reigns, that's for sure. Big day here at Le Mans in France. The 24 hours of Le Mans continue with thanks to our friends at Michelin. And we will be with you right through to the top of the hour. Then we'll be back at 5:30 p.m. Eastern this afternoon. Of course, it's a very busy weekend of motorsport around the world, especially at Indianapolis in Indiana with the US Grand Prix and qualifying coming up a little later today. So we look forward to that, but we will be back with you at 5:30 this afternoon. 17.5 hours in total of coverage. We're still under a full course caution. There was an accident involving the Radical of Tim Greaves. He was able to get that car back to pit lane, and we've got mixed conditions here. A greasy track We will make the most of that, boys. Here we go. I'm going to fire a few viewer emails at you, and thanks very much, folks, for sending them in. Encourage you to keep doing that, and you can go to speedtv.com and follow the links. Calvin, I'll fire this one to you first, and it's a good one too from Matt Nowell. Matt, I hope I pronounced that right. Why are none of the LMP2 Porsche cars at Le Mans? Did the teams, for example Dyson and Penske, decide not to compete, or were they not invited?
Well, a bit of both. I mean, of course, you have to get the invite to come over here, but I think for the Penske group, they said when they announced their LMP2 program a couple of years ago, they weren't going to compete at Le Mans, certainly for another couple of years, so there was no intent for those guys to come over, and it's just a massive undertaking, and I think the fact that Acura came into the American Le Mans Series this year really underscored just the importance of really getting all your ducks in a row and being able to defend your championship there. We can see how competitive it is. Acura are here this year in terms of Adrian Fernandez, one of their drivers competing. They've got management from both Adrian Fernandez Racing as well as Andretti Green are here. Certainly we understand representatives from Highcroft. All three of the Acura groups are here to try and learn a little bit about Le Mans, and I would expect to see Acura here next year. Whether that'll be the catalyst for Porsche, hopefully so. And let's not forget about Lowe's, because Lowe's was a big component in helping Adrian Fernandez compete in this Zytec here this weekend. Just updating you on a couple of quick things before we get to your question, Dorsey. Some driver changes while we're away. Tom Kristensen is now on board the number 2 Audi. It's TK's first stint. We didn't even think he was going to be here, so it's wonderful that he is heading for his 8th, possibly his 8th Le Mans crown, and Lucas Luhr is still in the number 3. However, Emanuele Pirro did get into the number 1 Audi. He took over from his good friend and longtime teammate Frank Biela. Manassian is still in the Peugeot, and so too is Sebastien Bourdais. Here we go, Dorsey. If the GT1 cars, and this is from Mario Villoria of Seattle and Washington, thanks Mario. If the GT1 cars, specifically the Astons and Corvettes, were able to run without air restrictors, how fast in terms of top speed would they be, and how much horsepower would their engines put out?
Well, actually, it's regulated in about 50 horsepower increments, I should say. The restrictors are not the same between the Aston and the Corvette, and they take 50 horsepower away at a time to try to regulate top speed with no restrictors. I would think the Corvette's probably down some 70 horsepower from its potential, and the Aston probably somewhere around 50 down from maybe what it could do. They would pick up their top speed 20, 25 miles per hour. Now, ACO has put out a rule, if you will, that they don't want any of the classes within 1.5% of the speed of the class in front of it. So for GT1, they wouldn't want to be 1.5% to the LMP2 cars, the 2 cars to 1 car, etc. And they're just trying to regulate each car so that they're at a specific speed. But if you unleashed the fury of the beast, she'd run pretty good.
She would.
That's a good one. We've got time to squeeze in one more, final one from Tom Morse, and either of you can answer this. Do you know how the drivers and crew condition for a race like Le Mans? Does the Corvette team, for example, have a special nutrition drink?
Well, it's become very popular with a lot of guys these days with this Glycomax, which is very popular over in the States. We see all of the sports car drivers, well, not all of them, but certainly a good percentage of them, Dorsey, are utilizing that. And it really enables you to really stay alert. Some of the guys really swear by it, and some of the crews are now actually starting to utilize it as well. I mean, this is a 24-hour race, and everyone thinks about the poor drivers, but there's 3 drivers per car. The crew, they're up all night, so it's really important they have the longevity to get through these.
Chris?
More action down here on pit lane. Corvette has decided to come back in, take those intermediates off. Magnussen already down and away. Gavin just went up in the air. They're pulling those intermediates off. They're putting slicks back on. The drivers are reporting that it's just very wet over in Mousson. But, oh, one of the Astons almost gets together with an LMP2 car down here. So the driver's just saying it's wet at that one specific spot on the racetrack. Other than that, it's dry. So a lot of these teams that came in and put wets on it, now going back to those slicks. We also saw the 97 Risi Competizione Ferrari come in and do the same. Now the problem is we get these waves. This rain comes kind of in waves. It's been doing this for the past few days where it'll rain hard for about 10 minutes, and then all of a sudden we get blue sky again. So right now the track may be dry, but you never know. 15, 20 minutes from now, we might get rain again. Brian?
Down at Audi, waiting on Dindo Capello, just finishing up another interview. I'll update the one car while we wait here. They did a nose change on the last pit stop, and they did it because they had a bad tire pressure sensor in the nose, so they changed that nose to see if that new antenna would send them the proper signals and they would get the right data from their tire inflation. So right now, Dindo just finishing up an interview, and we'll try to get a word with him here.
And then it's better to lose a few seconds in the pit for a safety reason than continue without tire pressure information. You're very welcome.
Dindo, awesome stint there on the first stint. Great job, but how tricky was the track there towards the end of that stint?
Was very tricky, and I immediately felt it when in the corner one Sebastien missed the first corner. That was a good reference point for me, because then I back off a little bit earlier. I tried to turn in a little bit earlier to avoid the same mistake, because in that corner, even after a few laps, when the grip, when the track was completely dry, there was no grip at all. There was just understeer in the entrance, oversteer in the exit, and it was very, very tricky to drive.
And you've got a birthday tomorrow. What would be better, present or the checkered flag if you're in first?
Yeah, for sure. You know yourself what will be, or what would be the best present for me, but I don't think about that. Now we have to think about the race, and if tomorrow a good present will come, it will be welcome.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a very dynamic start as we see the three in. The kids are in. Lucas Luhr is out. And it looked like Mike Rockenfeller climbing aboard. Rocky, who we know so well from the American Le Mans Series, now full-time in the DTM. This kid is hot. He is fast, and he and Lucas Luhr make a great combination. Hey, thanks for those emails. Much appreciated. Keep sending them in. It's speedtv.com, keyword Le Mans. Speed's coverage of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans is brought to you by Carrier. Turn to the experts for all your heating and cooling needs. And by Chevy, an American Revolution. We are back at Le Mans, and finally that caution, the first full course caution period is over. We are back to racing. And speaking of racing, a very productive start from Adrian Fernandez, Justin Bell.
It's a great first hour of the race for you, apart from the conditions must have been very tricky.
Yeah, everything was good, no dramas on the start. Basically, we was just keeping the pace and trying to see what the weather is going to do. It's going to be unpredictable all the 24 hours, so you just have to be patient. We have a little bit of a drama here with a wheel nut, but apparently it's okay. I thought you didn't supposed to spin the wheel.
Yeah, but they didn't get that letter from the organisers. Now, obviously, the thing out there is the team telling you try and stay out there for as long as you can without having to make a wet tyre decision.
Well, basically, when they said they saw the rain, basically they pit me in and they changed for intermediate tires, thinking that it was going to get, wetter, and it didn't. So basically, I came back in and. Basically, we changed drivers, and I'm back to slicks now, so we should be okay. Supposedly, it looks dry right now, so hopefully it stays like that.
Now, just a quick thing, we were obviously off air when you had the problem with the wheel nut, but, I mean, that's not something you plan for in your strategy meetings. I mean, if it's wrong now, is it going to have to stay wrong all through the race?
I hope not. I really don't know what happened. I hope it's really okay for the rest of the race. This is a long race. You can see Michael Burgess here. They're having some issues, so it's... I know everybody's going to have a problem, so hopefully that little bit was our problem.
Well, you got a lot of fans in the States watching this, so good luck for the rest of the race. Fantastic. Brian, you got something happening up there.
I'm here with Lucas Luhr, who just climbed out of the Audi, the first prototype experience that you've had here at Le Mans. Obviously, you race a prototype back in the States, but how sweet was this?
It was really sweet until the rain comes. And I was really praying for my engineer to say, Lucas, speed now. And I said, hey, guys, it's raining first chicane. They say, we know, you stay out. I said, no, please. And now, finally, the rain disappeared, but it was great. I had some moments because I was fighting with Bourdais. Behind him, I lost downforce, so I had some moments in the Porsche corners. But finally, I got by him, so it was a good stint.
How different is this prototype from the Porsche P2 car that you're used to racing in the States?
Well, sweet. I mean, you don't hear the engine, you hit the throttle and then you feel it because your head gets knocked back like crazy. There's a lot of power. On the other hand, also a lot of weight. So it's a kind of, you know, yeah, it's two different philosophies.
Well, best of luck. You certainly seem to be adapting to it well.
Back to it, and the Peugeot of Nicholas Manassian is chasing the Audi. Tom Kristensen leads convincingly at the moment. So it's Audi, Peugeot, Audi, Peugeot, Audi. So it's a nice split across the top 5, and then the best of the Pescarolos is Emmanuel Collard.
And of course, talking to Lucas Luhr, he was the LMP2 champion last year along with Sasha Marson. So not only does he know prototype cars, he's very fast in them. We understand there's been a change of position at the front. It's now an Audi 1-2. Pirro got around Bourdais to take second place away. We're now looking at the man here at Le Mans, Tom Kristensen. So glad he's here. Had to be a very difficult 6 weeks for him as he had to try and recoup from that massive accident over in Germany.
Laying down some fantastic lap times, I can say that much for him. And the guy comes out of the pits and puts the hammer down. It seems, you heard about right then with Lucas Luhr, that you lose aerodynamic downforce when you're behind somebody. Of course, that gives you the advantage when you're up in the front like this. The lead car seems to be able to pull away pretty easily from the pack.
And they run these cars so trimmed out to try and get the straightaway speed. Speeds this year up around 208 to 210 we saw in qualifying from the Audis and the Peugeots. So in the race it seems like the Audis certainly using a little bit more power than the Peugeots in race trim.
Of course, a lot of that speed, of course, Tête Rouge reconfigured, as we said at the beginning of the show. It's a less tight corner now, brand new asphalt, a lot of grip.
They say it's just really a dab on the brakes and go, so that's phenomenal. It's almost a gear taller than it was last year. In fact, they said in the wet it's as quick as it was last year in the dry. This is through Arnage. Tom Kristensen, a lot more runoff there now, a lot more grip. It's been resurfaced all the way down to the Porsche curves. There used to be a big bump on entry to the Porsche curves. That is now gone. And that is a real concern for these drivers. These cars run so low to the ground on a bumpy race surface that you get right there. That really helps the entry speed.
Well, it's 185 miles per hour when you get down there, so that's pretty good. That's up a couple miles an hour from what it had been.
No surprises at the front of the field with Tom Kristensen leading the way, but some new teams, some different teams are performing well in these opening 2 hours. The class-leading car in LMP2, it's Warren Hughes in the 40 Quiffle ASM team. It's a Lola AER. That's the class-leading car there. In GT1, it is Peter Cox in the Aston Martin in the 007, one of the factory Astons. David Brabham is second at the moment. And in GT2, it is a debut team here, Autolando Porsche. And that's got Alan Simonson behind the wheel, the Dane, who is at Le Mans for the first time, but he's with someone who has experience here. That's Pierre Dieudonne. He has won the Rolex 24 at Daytona with the Farnbacher Lowe's car, and off goes Tom Kristensen, exactly where Bourdais did.
Good save.
Gathers it back up, and that was close.
Wow, that corner just must be so slick. He just cut a lap at 3:33, which is about 3 seconds slower.
Cal, it's raining like crazy in that corner. That's why he's gone off. Look at the slicks on the track.
And this is exactly what Lucas Luhr was talking about when he saw the rain out on the racetrack, and the engineer said, stay out. It is a nightmare for a driver. It's literally like driving on ice in your road car at home.
Have you ever seen conditions so unpredictable?
He stays off of those cones. That's a good thing. Did not do any damage to the bodywork, but as soon as he made that save, I saw that the track was totally wet.
Now look, Dors, it's sunshine.
Yeah, that's the problem.
It's incredible. Right? This is crazy.
8 miles of track, you can have sunshine, rain, anything.
Lights come on. Kristensen lets the other cars know the best at Le Sarthe is coming through.
It was Dr. Ferry Porsche who once said, for something to endure, it must be unique. He believed that nothing bred greater endurance than the challenge of motorsport, and his 911 was proof. 43 wins at the Rolex 24 at Daytona, 42 victories at Le Mans, another 45 at Sebring. And did we mention the Monte Carlo and Dakar rallies? The 911, an icon, a legend, the benchmark. Dedication to perfection. It's in every Porsche built.
Dramatic scenes here at Le Mans and devastation for the Audi team, particularly the number 3 team, and that is the Yost outfit. Young Mike Rockenfeller has crashed the R10 heavily. This is it, moments ago at Tête Rouge, the corner that Dorsey told us about that has been heavily modified. It is the fastest corner on the track. It leads on to Mulsanne, and look at the Audi team. They are in disbelief. The young man with so much promise who has won Le Mans here in the GT2 class before with Mark Lieb and American Leo Hendry is out. That car is done, and it is heavily damaged.
We have to assume that the track conditions down there were similar to what we were seeing
Tom
Kristensen deal with in that chicane. So it's only about a mile from there down to Tête Rouge. So unbelievable drama here in the first couple of hours.
Well, you go down to Tête Rouge at 150 mile per hour because they've opened the corner up. You only slow to the middle of the corner to 120 mile per hour. But that guardrail was completely stove in. I mean, not just the upper, the lower as well. They're certainly going to have to repair the course now.
Looking at Ralph Juttner there on screen. Communication with the pit wall determining what they're going to be doing down there.
And this is the team that's being engineered by American Brad Kettler from Champion Racing. He will be devastated. This is the team they were calling the youngsters with so much talent. Lucas Luhr, Mike Rockenfeller, and Alexander Premet. And the day has finished before it's really begun. Ron Mathis and Justin Taylor, other Americans from Champion Racing, working on that team. And sadly, their 2007 Le Mans campaign is over. Look at that contact point.
That's just unbelievable how far it's pushed that. That will have to be repaired. They won't let the circuit stay like that, I can't imagine. You know, that's right at the trees, coming onto Mulsanne Straight. That hit right there, well into the upper 100 mile per hour.
Rocky was still in the car when they pulled that car back off course. We hope he's okay. When you go in backwards like that, it's never a good sign. I hope that Mike is okay. A massive shunt.
Of course, this is World Feed we're on, so we can't give you a replay. If they show us one, we'll certainly love to see what's gone wrong, but it is a huge hit. There's no question about that.
If you're wondering about the numerals on that previous shot, of course, that's taken from a fixed camera, a security camera on the circuit, showing us that damage. Let's show you exactly where it is on the track. Let's go to the track map, Dorsey. Highlight it for us, if you will.
Well, we don't have a highlighter, but Tête Rouge up there in the top left, or the bottom left of the screen, is the fastest corner on the racetrack. As I said, it's been reconfigured. They've taken it and they've shortened it. It's 21 meters shorter, 65 feet. It's much faster than it used to be. It's a gear taller, 120 miles per hour at the apex. And of course, it leads on to the longest straightaway on the circuit, meaning it's the most important corner to get right. It's a corner you would attack, no question.
Brian?
Well, the crew trying to talk to Rocky in the number 3 just moments ago, they were actually thinking that they might be able to get the car to roll. Obviously, they only have the pictures from the World Feed as well. I see Ralph Juttner walking back into the garage. He's now talking with several other of the engineers and the staff here at Yost. See them talking, Ralph Juttner walking back towards the pit wall, so they're trying to decide what to do. We always say that these Audis, even the R8, was built like a tank, but after a hit like that, guys, I cannot believe he could get it back, and even if he did, that they could get back in competition.
Well, the problem is, Brian, we talk about gearbox issues here at Le Mans. They've outlawed how you could change the whole gearbox, and, you know, with such rear suspension damage, you have to run the same rear, you know, gearbox casing now, Dorsey, so if it's damaged the casing, even if they got it back to the paddock, that could put them out for good.
Well, one thing I didn't see was gear oil on the ground. When you saw that shot of them pushing it back, it surprised me, first of all, that they could push it. The right rear suspension completely gone. There's no part left of it whatsoever. Left rear tires completely flat, so for those guys to push it was a huge effort. I didn't see the oil, but nonetheless, that car is gone in so hard. By the looks of that guardrail, I guarantee you that the whole engine, transmission assembly, all of that is broken off from its original mounting points. That car's done, I guarantee it is.
They're the most damage you've seen on an R8 or an R10?
I think it is. We've seen a couple over in the States over the course of the years. Peugeot had a big one year in one of the ALMS rounds, but you know, this is why they brought 3 cars here. I mean, they said there's more opportunities. Yes, there's an increased workload, but you never know what's going to happen. Going back to Dr. Ulrich's words, he said, expect the unexpected. And Emanuele Pero said this race is full of threats.
Okay, there is Dr. Wolfgang Ulrich trying to manage the situation as we are under our second full course caution. We'll be back. If you need to jazz up your mobile phone, it's time to log on to speedtv.com for custom wallpaper and ringtones. Satisfy your need for speed with high-octane ringtones and fuel-injected wallpapers from Speed Mobile. Do it today at speedtv.com. You cannot believe what has happened now after going to another commercial break. One of America's hopes. It is Team Corvette, the 64 of Ollie Gavin, a four-time class winner. The last three in a row is stationary out on track. Brian?
Just checked in with Steve Wieselowski, who's one of the program managers here for Chevrolet, the head of their road racing. Just checked with him, and he said Gavin has a problem right now, some type of a gearbox issue. The car is out of gear. It won't go back in gear, and that's about all they'll say. So don't know where the problem lies in that drivetrain, but basically, if you can't get it in a gear, you're not going anywhere.
There's a couple things that they'll be trying to do right there. They'll try to, well, he can't rock the car. That's the problem. I mean, if the marshals would help him push it back and forth, he could try to get a gear, but sitting stationary with those paddle shifters, you can't get any movement. So he could cut the engine off and try to manipulate the gear shift to go and bump the starter at the same time, but he knows that, and I'm sure they've tried all those things already. It's a difficult situation with a paddle shift car if you're stopped in neutral.
Any repairs or maintenance on the car during the race, apart from in front of the garage area, have to be carried out by the driver alone, with the tools and parts that are actually carried on the race car, so the crews can't suddenly blast over there with any support equipment or spare parts. So you got to be prepared. There will be a small toolbox on board, but if it's a major gearbox issue, Gavin's day may be over.
And of course, these gearboxes are electronic, Calvin. As you know, you're pushing or pulling a paddle to shift it, and there's solenoids involved there, and there's a ECU or a computer that tells it to do what you're asking it to do, and that's the problem with electronics. They do work or they don't, and right now, and we don't know that it's electronics either for that matter, but I mean, it's a very complex system.
Again, reminding you that at Le Mans, one of the rules, if you can't get back to pit road, back to pit lane under your own power, it's day over. Several recent examples of that. Do you remember when Frank Bieler, at that stage, he was a triple winner. He's now a four-time winner of this great event. He ran out of fuel out on course. That was it, event done. Bernd Schneider, when he was in the Works Mercedes, stopped just on pit out, agonizingly close to his own pit box, but that was it, day done for him as well. Let's get it to Brian.
Corvette program manager Doug Fehan here. Doug, obviously we see the problem for the 64. We've been told it's some type of a drive issue. The question is, guys, we're talking about fixing the car. The only way you can do it on course, tools that you have on hand. Is this something that Ollie's going to be able to take care of out there?
It's highly unlikely. Ollie has not been to the Home Depot school yet, so he's not real good with tools, and it looks like we may have broken a drive shaft the way it sounds to me right now, which would render the car immovable and probably out.
Bad luck for Corvette, especially this early in the race. Sad to see them with these problems, guys.
Drive shaft, of course, a different problem altogether. But remember earlier in the year, American Le Mans Series, they broke a drive shaft while they were practicing for this race too. So it's happened once already.
Yeah, they broke one in an event early on. I believe it may have been Houston. One of the cars suffered a DNF there through to a failure of a similar description. So right now, Ollie's just trying to give the information back to the crew. They're trying to make sense of it, but no drive points in that direction. You see the other vet. Tough, long race ahead of them here. You know, over 18 hours left. You only got one bullet in the gun. Lots of Astons out there. I mean, there's some support cars, the Luc Alphon cars, but they're not running at the same pace of these factory Corvettes, that's for sure.
And of course, add into that mix a very interesting ingredient, and that is the Orica Salines. Justin Bell has more.
Very friendly place now with my old friends at Orica here. Now, obviously, everyone's always said one day someone will get hold of a Saline and really do the right job. And I'm here with Pierre Dieudonne, who's the competition director. Pierre, I mean, it's not exactly on point to plan, but the cars have just been in and out.
Yes, of course, the beginning of the race is a bit hectic with the safety car. But it's still too early to know if our stops will play in our favor or not.
Now tell me, I mean, you're running a pace, and I know how you guys work. You're very disciplined on race pace, and obviously that's what's in play right now.
Yes, we do our races. The first target is to finish, and for sure we'll avoid to get into silly battle at this stage of the race.
And now tell me, on the tire choice, obviously right now you're back out on slicks. You were always very good at looking at the weather. I mean, you've got little French spies everywhere, I'm sure, tracking this.
Yes, but at the same time we are on the safe side because, you know, as I said, we do not want to make a stupid mistake. So when we had the first rain shower, we stopped for wet tires, and it turned to be a mistake because it was only a light shower. But when it starts raining, you are never sure. It is better to do the mistake in that direction than the other one. Otherwise, you end up on slicks, and then it's undrivable and you crash your car.
Well, one thing I know for sure with Team Oreca is they make very few mistakes, so let's hope that's the last one.
Thanks,
Back
Justin. How about that? It looked like Ollie Gavin got the C6R going again, and then the official stopped him.
And I'll tell you what that's about. It's not a drive shaft issue because it wouldn't move. When they pushed him back into that safe area, he did what I talked about. He got it into a gear while he was sitting there with the push. Then he tried to drive out onto the circuit, and they said, no, 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 no. We've given you assistance. You can't get assistance, so there's an issue. See it right here? The drive shaft's fine. He could never have done that.
They're saying, go back, go back.
When they pushed him backwards, he found the gear he needed. He got it into a gear, and of course, now they've stopped him and told him, no, your day's done.
Wow, can you believe it? So early on, and the four-time and defending winner in GT1, Oliver Gavin, is done. Coverage of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans is presented by Michelin, a better way forward. By the new face of Audi. They're young, powerful, and ready to play. Visit your local Audi dealer today to find one in your size. And by Valvoline, 100 years under the hood. We're back here at Le Mans only momentarily though, folks, because it's a very busy day on speed. Up next, it's F1 qualifying from Indianapolis. It is a super day of viewing. We've got some NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series action coming up, including setup before the race. We're back with you at 5:30 Eastern. Then we'll go away again at 7 p.m. for final practice from Michigan with the Nextel Cup. And then we're back with you from 8 p.m. Eastern all the way through. We're going to take you through to the checkered flag and beyond. And look at that, a distraught, a frustrated Oliver Gavin out of his Corvette C6R.
Now, we can't wait to get word of exactly what the decision is going to be here. You know, we saw him push him back in there, and of course, the car moved forward under its own power. It means the drive shaft is connected. It is fine. He got a gear, but then the marshal stopped him. And there's a bunch of things going on down in the pit, and I'm sure they're trying to figure this all out.
Gary Pratt right in the middle of that, of Pratt and Miller, obviously. And Brian, I don't imagine it's a very harmonious time down there in Corvette. This is frustrating times.
It's very frustrating. You see it on the face of all the crew members. Max Pappas just pulled on his driving suit and said, guys, he can drive it back on the starter motor. And they're saying, no, he can't. They pushed him back behind the wall. And he said, I've done it before here. So Max Pappas saying that he can do it. What it seems to be is some type of a prop shaft inside the gearbox. It connects with the starter motor, and it'll roll over and it'll turn the car. But there is no drive once the drive shaft comes into the transmission. So there's no power into the gearbox. That's why the car won't move. So something either broken on the drive shaft itself or the prop shaft inside the gearbox. And these Corvette gearboxes actually have two starters on it, so they can use those two starters to propel the car along. The question is, even if he was out on the track, can he get around 6 miles or so back to pit lane? Right now, it seems like the officials aren't going to let him, but Gary Pratt was saying just a minute ago, hey, find an official, find out why we can't drive it back on the starter motor. There seems to be no rule that says we can't.
It sounds to me like they've got a primary drive in their transmission and a gear that goes to a secondary drive. The primary drive would be run off the starter motor. So what he could have done is put it into a gear and run the starter motor. It will engage and run at the speed of the starter motor. Now that car has 2 different starter motors, so if you burnt one of them up while doing this, you could go to the backup one and run off that starter motor. So they theoretically could make it back to the pits depending on where they are. However, it still, to me, sounds like an internal gearbox problem. Once they got it back there, they'd have an issue.
In GT1, drivers we know so well in the American Le Mans Series and in the US in general, Darren Turner leads the way in the Aston Martin, the 009. Jan Magnussen in the sister Corvette to this one is second. Tomas Enge in the 007 Aston is third. And Christian Fittipaldi in the Team Modena Aston 59 is fourth at the moment. Tom Kristensen right there on screen is the overall race leader. If you have just joined us, this is what you've missed so far in the opening 2 hours of the 75th running of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. Let's take a look. Front, Dindo Capello in the Audi and Sebastien Bourdais going hard at it up through turn 1 in questionable weather conditions, and just look at how it caught Sebastien Bourdais out. Slips and slides off track, takes one of the bollards with him, and Dindo Capello slips through. The Peugeots were racy in the opening hour, and they were shadowed by the remaining 2 Audis. Michael Verges almost took out his Barazzi Epsilon teammate Adrian Fernandez, and Verges sat in his pit box for quite some time with troubles on that car. The Krone car of Tracy Krone, the Risi Competizione Ferrari, running off track, and the sister car of Jamie Mello, a door problem. To the second hour, Tom Kristensen climbed aboard the car, and he also had a problem, but nowhere near as dramatic as his teammate Mike Rockenfeller. Heavy damage at Tete Rouge after colliding with the Armco barrier. And then this brings us up to the most recent drama of Oliver Gavin with a drive problem on the Corvette, the 64, and he is still stationary out on course. That brings you up to date in the opening 2 hours so far. There's Tom Kristensen. He leads the race and leads LMP1. And then you have the Lawler AER of Warren Hughes to Castro Amaral, who leads P2. They've done that for the majority of the race, incidentally. And then in GT1, there has been a change just of recent times, although it says Fittipaldi there. Darren Turner is leading in the Works Aston. And then in GT2, it is the new coming team, the Auto Orlando Porsche of Alan Simonsen, Pierre Eret, and Lars-Erik Nielsen in the 93 leads the way. So hopefully that brings you up to date. That's where we stand as of now. It's been quite a dramatic opening 2 hours.
It really is. A number of surprises. The crash with Rockenfeller is a big one. Certainly one of the Audi's bullets has gone already. I think the pace of the Audis is quite impressive. I don't think anyone expected that, Dorsey, for them to outrun the Peugeots in the early going at least.
And you see what happens when you just get rain in one corner. We are not even scratching the surface so far. It hasn't rained hard like it has the whole time we've been here. Watch out when we get a big downpour, because it can change dramatically the outcome of what's going to happen for the rest of this event.
Haven't seen much of the Pescarolos, have we? That's Harold Primat. Big opportunity for him to run with Henri Pescarolo. It's their big drive to be the best of the petrol-powered cars against the Audis, and Henri Pescarolo very vocal in his opposition to the current regulations at the moment. We'll see how their cars perform over this 24-hour period. Just 22 hours to go. Did I say just 22 hours to go? It's a long way to go. We're under our second full course caution if you've just tuned in here at Le Mans, but we will be back at 5:30 Eastern later today. The predictions, the forecast, the weather should tidy up a little bit. We certainly cross our fingers and hope so, and we thank you for joining us for this opening 2.5 hours of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. Sadly, one of our big hopes in the GT1 class, Oliver Gavin in the CompuWare Corvette, is already out, and so too is the R10 Audi of Mike Rockenfeller, Lucas Luhr, and Alex Primet. Heavy contact with the wall. Enjoy the day's viewing on Speed. We hope you can join us at 5:30 p.m. Eastern a little later today. From Le Mans, on behalf of the whole team, we'll see you then.
Can't stop, addicted to the shindig. Chop, chop, he says I'm gonna win big. your best friend. Eastside love is living on the West End. Knocked off the ball, you better come to. Don't die, you know the truth is some do. Go write your message on the pavement. Burn so bright, I wonder what the wave meant.
That is the sound of Le Mans. Finesse and fortitude, persistence and passion. I have never seen a crowd like this. The greatest event in sports car racing. They're fighting like it's a sprint race already.
They've covered 3,267 miles.
Oh! It has gone again.
Oh, there it is. It's into the trees.
Right. Unbelievable.
24 Hours of Le Mans continues tonight, 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific, exclusively on Speed.
We live for events just like this.